Can I come in on that, Tim? You're absolutely right. It's something we didn't predict would happen, didn't perceive, and as of all these things, these things will happen. Regulation will be brought in mid-season. Sorry, to roll back. The problem is that if you win 3 opens, you get a £7 penalty, and therefore they might as well go into a conditions race and take £3 more, whilst the ground is firm. Because remember, if they're carrying a £10 penalty, plus they've got the £3 allowance for the jockey, they're carrying 12 stone, £13. Now that's fine in the spring when it's fast, but I don't think many will be doing it in the winter. So, bottom line though, we recognise that issue has come up, and so this summer a regulation will be added or amended, and basically once you've won 3 opens, you won't be able to run in that season, you will not be able to run in conditions races. So that problem will be taken out.
And your second question, Tim?
The second question is to do with numbers of horses in the sport, which is obviously a big problem. One of the reasons I believe it's happening is because the standard of racing now is so incredibly high that it is very, very difficult for a new entrant to get into the sport unless they're connected. They've got connections, the dad's a jockey, the father's a trainer, or goodness knows what. So it appears that the jockey training mentoring system works really, really well, and I'm just wondering whether that can, and that's paid by somebody, perhaps the levy board, perhaps these guys could be given more money to go round to pony clubs, hunt meetings and the like, because to say, and people who could potentially be racing personalities, I don't mind where the money comes from, it doesn't have to come from the levy board, it comes from some nice benefactor or whatever. Because there are plenty of kids who get to about 16, 17, go through the pony club, not interested in the dressage, well they might be, but they like going help leather around the countryside, but to actually get a horse and then to see these really high profile horses racing, and they are trained to an incredibly high standard, it's difficult to know what to do and where to go, and I just think it would be worth it, but it needs to be done by a professional person, in my opinion, not just a guy who gives up their time to be a rep on the Ppora, although they could help, but there should be something that's really formalised, because it's so difficult, and I believe there are loads and loads of people, not all of them, but relative people, there would be people who could join the sport. You've already indicated that owner trainers have left for varying reasons about that, and to make it easier to get in, because I've been doing it for years and years, but I was just lucky. I got a horse to start with, and then it went from there. I managed to fall off in my first point-to-point, win the second one, and all that sort of stuff. And there are plenty of kids, I reckon, who would like to do that, but they need big help.
I think probably things were a bit different when you started, Tim. But anyway, precisely. I was struggling to think about who to back this question to, and Peter put his hand up. So
I think it's worth noting that we've had 100 new jockeys this season, which is actually commensurate with the 3 years previous to COVID. It was about 100. So actually the number of jockeys coming on hasn't changed. Obviously, maybe their nature has changed in that a lot of them are within yards. But I think that trend has been going around for a long time, to be quite honest. Now, perhaps Nick's model and Fergal O'Brien's model hasn't been quite so clear-cut in the past. So, and actually I'm all in favour of it, to be honest. But the other new jockeys starting from nothing, perhaps, is not. What's interesting is, though, I think the young jockeys coming through, the numbers have held up, as I say, probably increased slightly. Where we've lost them, interestingly, is at the older age, where you used to have people coming back quite often at age 40 plus because they could afford to buy a horse and were finally going to give it a go. Because that's fundamentally the problem, is you can't afford a horse when you're 18 unless your parents are going to buy you one. And no one's going to put up a new jockey for nothing. So that's been the interesting aside, and I think it's been a fallout of the assessments and the cost. It has to be admitted that it costs a new jockey about £1,000 now to set up. Now, if you're considering that against the cost of training a horse and buying a horse, is not very much. But if you're just talking about setting yourself up, £1,000 is a lot of money. So that I recognise. But But I think one of the things I'm looking at, and it would be interesting to get Fran and Charlie's view of it, is one of the things we have been looking at, and I'm afraid I haven't had time to explore further, but I'll voice it here, is the thought of having an open yard day where we get various yards to open up at some stage to allow people to come in, not only prospective owners, which of course would be the yard's hope, but also for prospective owner trainers, so they get an opportunity to understand what is required. Because certainly this year, really puzzlingly perhaps, but we've got quite a lot of mother and daughter combinations coming in who don't know one end of the point, never been point-pointing, let alone having a horse. But I presume they're fallouts from eventing. But they definitely giving it a go. But they really don't know anything. And so actually, I think that might be a help, because underlying what you're saying, Tim, I think there is an issue about how the new demographics, which is what we need to recruit from, get trained up and understand what they're doing if they're going to go down this route.
Charlotte?
I was just going to say, and it had just popped into my head, so I don't expect any sort of serious thought about this one into. I get through a lot of stuff from the BH. I don't know if anyone's noticed, though, took my time out, but it's not because I don't like 2020. This is still good. But I get a lot of stuff about the online courses that obviously developed through COVID, and we get a lot, whether they're about diversity, whether they're about corporate secretaries, things, and you basically work through a program. Some of them take 20 minutes, and some of them take a couple of hours, and actually something along that line.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Could be really good.
I think there are a lot of things that the BHA and other organisations do that are actually available to point people that we just don't really know about, and they don't shout about them enough, and neither do we. Yes. I quite agree.
Okay. So I represent Pony Racing Board, which I hope will answer your question a bit. Last season, the Pony Club had 8 meetings. Next season, they're going to have 10 meetings run by the Pony Club. Then we have the point-to-point series, of which we have a novice riders, an intermediate, and an open race. Then we have the Ppora series, which takes place on national hunt courses. And then this year, we had a series on the all-weather that took place at Wolverhampton. So we get these kids from the age of 9 to 15, and we do educate them and their parents, and some ponies are more appropriate than the others. But we do find that at 15, there is this gap, and it's the reality gap. Because they've met jockey coaches. We have jockey coaches walk the courses with them. So they've met people, but there is a reality gap on where these people live, whether they can manage ponies but can't manage horses, whether they can afford the pony but can't afford the horse. And that is a reality. I was speaking to a 15-year-old at Tabley, a Scouser, and she'd got her pony in a livery yard, and she desperately wants to go, but they've met people. The Ruth Hurley, who runs that area, is really, really supportive, but they nearly want an old horse given to them, which they can just about keep. But from the sport, we have had a lot of owner riders go forward. At Charlie's, I have quite a couple of my own, and on the flat, Mr. Balding does well for them. There is a support there, but there is a reality there on where these people live and need what they need to get going.
I am very conscious of time here, and I see that people are already wandering down to drink the champagne that the Sharps have very kindly sponsored, and don't really want to sit here too much longer. But I did get a question from someone who usually comes to this meeting who was unable to come today, that I've given to Nolan Best to read out. I would just like to do that before we wrap up and go down the road. Nolan.
Sorry.
Okay. Mr. Chairman and fellow members of Ppora, I wish to voice my disappointment at the spiralling decline in our sport, which has rapidly become a business. After over 50 years, what was an amateur sport in every way, I now feel point-to-point has lost its way. are now being used by trainers for profiteering, with many of the jockeys being attached to professional yards and livery yards. Back in the day, no rider would be granted a certificate to ride in point-to-points if they worked in a livery yard, were a hunt servant or attached to a professional yard. Now most of them are. In addition, my biggest concern is the use of 4-year-old races as the path to the sales and likely to be seen point-to-points again. If 4-year-old races are to be continued and farmed for this purpose, may I suggest that one such race of this age group per area per month would suffice, and that 10 or 20% of the monies achieved by the winner at the sales return to the course that it won on. Some hope of that. This would then help the course who stage such races to keep up together with their costs and would direct extra income specifically to the venue.
Right, very, very quickly, answers in 10 seconds. Peter.
Right. Charlie and Fran will be appalled to hear that I checked with BHA the idea of a levy on a horse being sold when I first arrived. BHA died laughing and then put the phone down. So this isn't going to happen. So let's put that one away. What we have achieved with the 4-year-old side of life, I think, is getting the weights right, and we're separating them, allowing the traditional form of pointing to continue without being interfered with by the hotshot. And I cannot understand why people are concerned if that's going on parallel. It's just another race, separated. So, yes, there's more to do, but that's it.
Just on that, Chairman, the 4-year-olds have come through and been sold off. That's good business as far as I'm concerned. What I would like to see, taking that a little step further, is the maiden restricted intermediate course by the end of the season. Get a slot at Doncaster Prime Sale where he's sponsored from Ppora or whatever, 5 or 10 grand, to make those young horses stay in our sport.
I think the vast majority of those ones probably do stay in the sport. The ones that have gone up the ranks tends to stay. It's the ones that win one disappear. A lot of those ones are point-to-point people who are keeping it. Anyway, quickly.
I was just going to say race planning is the key to this, really.
And then, Alan?
As a keeper, having more horses to run is got to be good for the sport. They pay their hunter certificate, they pay their entry money, they're turning up, they're running. What people decide to do with their horses is their own decision. But if we've got horses, we've sat here today saying that we need more horses, and then I don't know who that question came from, but if they're saying we're trying to make business out of it, surely anyone running a sport wants to make money. And if we're not going to have the opportunity to make money, whether it be for the hunt, the club or whatever, and having horses to run, I'm sorry, I can't support that idea.
I would just say that the sport needs to, I think, embrace every type. A commercial trainer. I think it's a good thing that the licensed trainers, the staff, are riding in point-to-points. The standard of riding now is infinitely much better than the past that was being referred to, and that's a good thing from safety, which we've got to take care of these days. I don't think there's anywhere going back, but as Alona said, the race planning is essential to embrace all of these, and we should encourage the young horses to be sold through the sales. That does continue the income, but it also is a showcase of the sport, and people as well can follow these young horses through into the rules, like Energumene. He's been well mentioned, but he always gets a recognition that he started at Lark Hill. You know, that comes up just about every time he runs. And that's a good thing, and it's bringing people who wouldn't know what Lark Hill or any point-to-point is about, they'll start asking questions, and I think that's only good and best.
Quite agree. Ilona just wants to say one more thing. And
Just one more quick thing, and I think it's all part of this and all part of race planning is owners, trainers, riders with 1 or 2 horses, the true amateurs. We need to embrace those, and there is a place for them in the race programming as well. And that's not just owner owner riders, that's owner trainer riders, so that they aren't in the big yard being trained by the big yards. They have a horse of their own at home. So, you know, we're looking at that as well, because there is a place for that in the race programme too. We've only got to have 2 horses, Robert.
Now, we could go on forever, but I think we've probably covered most of what we
I'd like
want
to
to.
bring up one more thing. Are we happy with the situation of our hunter chases?
Shall I just,
Yes.
with me sitting in both camps, hunter chasing, we have just actually formed a hunter chase committee that is going to look at hunter chasing as a whole, both from point to pointing and from hunter chasers as a rules track. Rules tracks are under pressure. Next year, my media rights, every race I have less than 8 runners in, I am fined. And whilst I am supportive of hunter chasing, you need to look at this for all the courses that aren't as supportive of hunter chasing, because we are all going to be fined for every race with less than 8 runners. So, you know, today we have gone over and above to provide the most fantastic ground here. I've got a new sponsor for my Ladies Open Championship race, and I have got 3 horses in it. I will be fined for 5 horses that haven't appeared. Why is that? You know, people moan about prize money. I've put on the best prize money here I possibly can for my evening, and I'm rewarded with 3 runners in a race. So yes, hunter chasing needs to be looked at, and it will be, because, you know, it is in serious danger.
I think the answer to your question then, are we happy with it? No, we're not. But we're powerless to do anything about it, and the clue is in the name, point to point. First and foremost, we've got our own problems there, and we need to get those right. Yes.
And they're not filling up. But the Tom, Dick and Harry 2 and 3 runners, shouldn't that money be coming back into pointing through the open races? It's not.
We could, yeah, you
It's
know,
not point to point,
like a
it's
lot of the
not
issues, we can,
races,
like
money.
a lot of the issues, we can talk about it all afternoon. But I am conscious of the sharp champagne getting warm. So,
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Could I just finish with a looking back, looking forward and so on? I think, you know, it's easy to look bemoan this season, but actually it has been fairly competitive and reasonably good racing, albeit dragged a little bit in terms of not things. I would like to say firstly, though, thank you very much to High Flyer Bloodstock, in that I think the judging iPad has really worked. A lot of the judges were extremely sceptical. We've had 7 dead heats this year. We've had many, many more that were literally noses, although we call them short heads. And actually, it does beg the question what was going on in the past, because normally 2 or 3 dead heats was all that was gone. So many judges have pointed out to me they're grateful. So I think that's been a remarkable success. Looking forward, my biggest focus, or our biggest focus, is finding more horses or more owners. And actually, our news, the 3rd member of the staff, will be focused purely on that aspect, along with sponsorship. And my greatest wish, and you could spread this about, because it would certainly help, is that more owners and trainers invested in buying a planner. The number of owners and trainers who tell me that their horse is not competitive, and then when I check, they put it in utterly wrong races, and surprisingly enough have got beaten hollow, is ridiculous. I mean, it's 35 quid, or whatever it is, or maybe it's 40 these days, I don't know. But whatever it is, it's cheap in compared with the cost of buying training a racehorse. It's madness, and I don't understand it. I really don't.
Right, thank you for that, Peter. Thank you, all of you on the panel, for coming and putting your heads above the parapet. Thank you for all asking sensible questions. And all it remains for me to do is thank you again.